Monday, the 15th of June.
Trinidad and Tobago, get ready for a musical explosion of freedom, culture, and pure steel band magic.
Featuring 5 of the nation's super bands, plus their talented youth bands.
Get ready for Generations of Steel,
the ultimate celebration of our national instrument.
Featuring 5 of the nation's super bands, plus the talented young band.
Experience the power and passion of Desperados,
Shell Invaders,
Massey Trinidad All-Stars,
First Citizens Supernovas,
and the pride of the South, Fun Play. Saturday, July 11th
at the iconic Grandstand, Queens Park, Savannah.
Save $100 and get your early bird tickets at $200 until Saturday, June 27th.
Get yours now. Available at ICNTT.com.
At Crosby St. James,
All Kenny Sports,
All Extra Foods Supermarket,
Westby, Tagarigua, Athletes by the Park,
Jumbo Foods Barataria,
GAC Electrical, opposite Starlight, Tiggermarkton Main Road,
Mirage Westside Supermarket in Arima,
and all participating bands. Presented by Super Padman, Dane Gulston and Friends. For more info, call 732-3402.
Generations of Steel.
In every victory, there's a story. In every defeat, there's a lesson. And behind every headline, there's a truth waiting to be told. Next week, veteran sports journalist Andre Batiste takes you beyond the scores, beyond the medals, and beyond the controversy in a special multi-episode series. The good, the bad, and the ugly of sports in Trinidad and Tobago. Hear from some of the nation's top athletes, administrators, coaches, and the biggest names in local sport as they share their triumphs, challenges, frustrations, and hopes for the future. Airs Wednesday 10th to Friday 12th at 2:30 p.m. Only on WESN, the content capital.
I say that in acknowledgement of all of the crime and murder stories in the news that on some level I don't necessarily want to comment on, because that means I would have to read them and look to see if there's anything to differentiate it that would make it worthy of commentary. Because just someone getting killed is a statistic. If there's nothing unique for me to add to the conversation, I would just be piling on to a negative sentiment for no constructive gain. Also, there is the fact that, emotionally speaking, and why it matters for the viewing and listening audience, as well as for myself, to some extent, to experience that negativity for no constructive gain is counterproductive, arguably, because if we literally just kept track of every murder, trust me, at some point you get numb to it, and then that's a very scary feeling that I hope never to necessarily appreciate. I don't know if I fully experienced that, but I came close at least one time. But more importantly, there's more important things to speak about here. So of course, as your friendly neighborhood, scruffy-looking Nerford, Sean Michael Small, once again, this is Talking Point to start off the week. It's been an interesting weekend, to say the least. Because while crime continues in all shapes, forms, varieties, and flavors, apparently, in one case, dash cam footage and CCTV footage, at least in part, of an attempted robbery, carjacking of, I assume, is a PH driver, or a private, when I say private, meaning a private favor. It showed 2 men looking to rob someone at gunpoint, either of their vehicle or relieve him of his valuables. I mean, it's hard not to assume they didn't want the vehicle as well, to be honest, but who knows. And the driver turned the tables to some extent on his assailants, damaged a parked car in his attempt to escape, which in my opinion is understandable, but I have no idea how the law would treat with that with regards to liability. To me, the guys with the guns attempting a robbery should be liable, but that's just me. That's a complex thing, so my oversimplified position might not necessarily be the best one. And then he at least hit one of the assailants, if not both, And I assume that is the assailant. You saw it in the dashcam footage. Someone basically being carried on the hood before he comes to a stop because it was a dead-end road. And I assume it's that individual who went to Port of Spain General, I think it was, and to treat his wounds, and he got arrested. So kudos for the police for catching up to that situation. Because in TNT, you know, the problem with the police is not that they're not capable. The problem is the proficiency and the results seemingly vary. But it's good to know there's still good officers out there who can get us reasonable or decent results while crime continues unabated. But I guess one could argue, and this is an argument that many interest group stakeholders, commenters, analysts have, the behavior of our leadership, of our politicians, to what extent does it trickle down, and the sheer contempt for the rules, contempt for propriety, disrespect for society. On some level, that's what it comes down to, whether intentional or unintentional. You know, when the public sees this in all its glory, some of which in the halls of Parliament, some of which out on the political campaign trail, if that is the example that we are asking our young people to live up to, then really and truly, what is there left to show children, you know, how to be adults, especially those whose parents are either having to wait too long hours and are not able to be there for their children or neglect their children. At times there will be national leaders who will come to the forefront in these children's lives, not necessarily, you know, physically in proximity, but emotionally, mentally. People to, if anything, look on the TV or hear about, this is someone, and this weekend it's in part centered around two of the younger politicians. Two of the politicians who are supposed to be, more than any of the older heads, examples in more ways than one, hitting multiple different demographics here, examples of what it means to be a Trinbagonian, by showing them how Trinbagonian politicians act and operate. And dare I say, while it is not necessarily the worst thing that I've ever seen, on some level I feel a bit more disappointed than the norm, because in the past things like this were a little bit more subtle and not so blatant, were a little bit more controlled and a little bit, if ever so slightly, more professional and not so seemingly out of control. And then what's interesting is the political leaders of both situations had to back up their guy. To what extent is that a mistake? Well, we could unpack all of that today. I've been going back and forth with which one to start with. Minister Padarath in all of his interesting decision making, and Mr. Marcel in all of his interesting choice of words. And I guess let's go with the less official one. This wasn't in Parliament, this was on a political platform from what I understand. And I think at the end of the day, I've read the opposition leader's defense of her member. And I think the problem is that a significant amount of her defense can technically be believed to be true. That Mr. Marcel was speaking to the feeling of the citizens in his constituency. Quote, a particular feeling in terms of how that area, who have lost their jobs, And they are of the view that the government does not care for them, end quote. That could be true. You could want to speak to them, and you might even want to, on some level, say what they're saying. But there have been many things that I know that the public has said. Things that I thought irresponsible. Things that I thought maybe went a little too far. Even if it ended up being the truth, even if we found out with hindsight that such sentiments are correct, I wasn't prepared to say it in the moment. Because at the end of the day, one of the things that I find very, very, very interesting, disappointing, and dare I say, insulting and aggravating, is the way how, and one could probably turn this around and point it back at me, but I'm going to say it anyway. Martin Luther King had a speech. The speech had very specific phrases, very specific ideas in that speech. And I think one of the reasons why that speech stands the test of time is just how self-evident not just the truth is in it, not just the righteousness of the words, but also the grace of the words. The strength of the words, strong, but that strength is not derived from having to tear anyone else down. Strength of words to uplift. And at times, I have even heard people in North America saying they have to reinterpret the speech because it's, they feel that they know better. They have to readjust the words to modernize it. And it meaning to totally go in a different direction and attempt to justify it, utilizing ideas and concepts that Dr. King did not mention. And I mention that to say, how far are you going to get if all you could do is vilify? Because if the problem is one side is being divisive, you do not solve the problem by doing anything that could be perceived to be divisive. You don't even have to be. The court of public opinion is not fair. It will not interpret your intentions perfectly. It will not give you a chance. Sometimes it will, at its own discretion. It is not up to you. I understand that people are hurting, and people in PNM constituencies perceive themselves to be hurting. And it very well, if we had any sort of data gathering capacity worth its salt in a timely manner, that's part of the worth, we might be able to find statistical evidence to corroborate these feelings. But it doesn't matter how true it is. Just like how all of my arguments over the Kayasili protests, over the Prime Minister's statements, the police and the minister's justification of Joshua Samru's shooting and death because of that shooting, didn't matter who was innocent or guilty. What mattered was how the situation was handled. Two wrongs don't make a right. If we are divided, dividing further is not solving the problem. If you want to claim that the UNC hates the PNM, that the PNM is used as a derogatory slur, then saying, I want them to know that we don't like them and we will never like them. Here's the thing. You can get away with saying they don't like we. You can get away with saying we don't like them. But when you say, and they will never like we, and we will never like them, then what is your purpose? You have admitted, at least from your perspective, that you are not fit for the job because you can't actually build the bridge, mend the fence, and get things back on track. You think a country could survive being divided? You think a government could run with only half the country, technically less than half, because neither of you all got 50% of the voters. You got over 50% of who voted. That's different. If your perception is essentially we are at an insurmountable impasse, we cannot figure out a way to move forward. It is impossible. That is what absolute statements like this mean. They will never like we will never like them. And I understand you don't have to like people to be able to work together. But I'm sorry. I thought, first and foremost, we are all Trinbagonian, and to some extent, our country, as all other nations, are predicated on the fact that as citizens of said country, we all have a stake in this thing. We rise and fall together. But apparently, not anymore. And I understand that is the nature of politics, particularly now, and maybe it's a cycle. I mean, politics in certain parts of the world at various times in history, pre-World War II, World War I, politics was crazy. Crazy. That's how you got a madman rising to power and causing the whole world to go at war. Politics was crazy. I get that. But must we learn lessons firsthand the hard way every time the cycle comes again? How do we solve an issue where you are complaining about being victimized? And part of that complaint could be, and they will never like we. Cool. But then, if you are supposed to be better, if you are supposed to have better answers, how am I, someone who is not a diehard supporter, supposed to take you seriously when you say, and we will never like them? Because if that's the case, think about it. The implication is you have essentially used, at least for part of your argument, similar language for both their side and your side. You have said, they don't like us, we don't like them. So then if they're racist, what does that make you and your side? Because you don't like them to the same degree, because you will never like them. Because those that stand with you, according to you, will never like them. And then there is the audacity to say, and if you feel the PNM is sleeping, Kamala Pasabi says, this is a quote, that your pollsters telling you that you could call an election and win the election, then come on, we are praying, are waiting. The PNM people are ready for elections to elect Penelope Beckles-Robinson as the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago. I'm not entirely sure if he genuinely believes what he says due to ignorance of the reality, or if this is some sort of strategy. Because I don't think anybody, I understand, I have been criticizing the government as time has gone over the last year. Increasingly, I have been criticizing because there's more things to criticize. And I'll get there in a minute. I'll get there this morning. Don't worry about it. There's a part two, as I mentioned. But to say that, oh, we're ready for the election, no, you're not. Let's be frank. It's an open secret that there's internal division in the PNM. Going off half-cocked like this, and now potentially forcing your leader to support you, assuming that she did not tell you to say these things, which I don't think she did, because it's not as though we have gotten basic raw rhetoric quite like this. The PNM has not gotten its own house in order. How is it going to defeat the people who just defeated them a year ago? From my perspective, they have had similar faux pas like what the former Minister of Finance tried to do to the Auditor General. But that's my perspective, because I'm looking at certain specific things that not everybody's looking for. And I will be the first to admit it, that my judgment based off of the criteria that I have personally for certain specific things, technical things that I look for, might not be what the general public looks for. Because I don't know if, with regards to scope or scale, the current government has done anything on the level of the Auditor General fiasco, the merit list fiasco, or the Brent Thomas affair. And let's not talk about Paria. Does that mean that the current government is doing a great job? Based on my commentary for the last couple of weeks, I would argue I have more no's to say to that than yeses. And to be honest, I am not looking forward to the next election, which is supposed to be 4 years away. I'm not. Because I feel even more than before, we're in a lose-lose. If you're a UNC diehard, it's a win-lose. If you're a PNM diehard, it's a win-lose. If you're someone in the middle, it's a lose-lose. Because the way this government does, not only do we have to suffer through the negative consequences, as we did under the previous administration, PNM, but the way this government does, then the further it will push the country back to the PNM, which has so far not even begun properly the process to rehabilitate itself. They just brought in a new senator to replace Janelle John Bates over whatever nonsense happened behind the scenes. And she spoke to this very thing, about the fact that the PNM is not ready. The PNM has not proven itself to have turned the page, to have resurrected its old bones and forged something new. And here you come to say this? It is easy to talk. It is easy to be charismatic. It is easy to say smart-sounding things or emotionally charged things. Leadership is hard. Sound judgment when it comes to trying to lead a large number of people with varying agendas, circumstances, perspectives, hopes, dreams, wants, wishes, needs. It's not easy. But I feel as though what we have with politicians is they do the easy thing, not because it's the right thing, but because it's easier than the proper thing, which is too hard. Cheap political points to your base is not going to win you elections. Because at the end of the day, who did this message go towards? The base. People whose votes you in theory have already. Yes, obviously there are PNM supporters who dropped you like a bad habit in the last election. And maybe this can bring them back. But you are cementing independent voters and independent thinkers from saying that is a viable alternative. And you are cementing the PNM being the other side of the same coin as some of our callers say, which one you're going to vote for. It's bad either way. If the current government is producing faults, is making mistakes, why do you decide now to help them by putting forth some of your own? It is an interesting phenomenon in politics in this country that frustrates me to no end because it speaks to the ineptitude and the unprofessionalism. At the very least, listen, I ain't even talking about who's corrupt and who's non-corrupt. I'm saying if one side decides to do some nonsense to make themselves look bad, you could almost bet your bottom dollar that the other side can't help but decide to catch up, to jump in the ring, to say, hold on, you think they're bad? You think they're stupid? You think they don't know what they're doing? Watch this. I don't understand that. It bothers me and it sickens me because it literally implies that we can't even get the basic level of political competition and meritocracy. It is all slave to whatever the finances agenda is and the nonsense political bubble that too many politicians have in their head, thinking somehow that is high-end political strategy. When the reality is, most of the population has seen through you. That's why the voting base dropped, or rather the number of voters compared to the voting base dropped from 58% to 54%. Dare I assume that the next election it will be 50%? And once it drops below 50, once you can't even get a majority of half, because that's what the UNC has, their magical mandate. It's not half of the voters. It's 3/5 of a little over half of the voters. They don't have half of the voting population voting for them. Now, if the total level of voters involved in the elections drop below half, what does that speak to our politics, to our population, to our society? Because that's where we're headed. Because the words you say have meaning. But dare I say, 9 times out of 10, public figures in this country do not understand the meaning of the words when they say it. That's why you have the commissioner messing up a situation more than it needed to be. That's why you have a Minister of Homeland Security, on one hand, messing up a situation more than it needed to be, and then having to fix situations that the Minister of Defense messes up on his own. That's why we see what we saw in Parliament from one minister who, in my opinion, exposed the fact that he had no clue what actually goes into managing the situation for the staff of Parliament. But I'll get to that in a bit. Like I said, there's a lot of crime stories over the weekend, maybe some more in one paper more than the other, but still you add it up, it's there. I'll just say this, the police conducted operations. They found some guns. Or rather they found a magazine, ammunition and the like. What's interesting is they announced it. I thought, ever since January, I thought they stopped announcing things they confiscated. I guess, maybe I misinterpreted the procedure on those things. Since it took 4 months to mention the Glock, apparently, allegedly, that Kaya Silly had in her bra. I'll say this. Because we have the young girl's murder, and now we have this situation, right? With regards to the assailant being run over by a private car, whether it's a PH car or what have you. And basically we get 2 instances where one is a driver, one is a passenger. Both are potential victims or victims. This situation with the PH, unregulated PH taxis, highlights something that we need to always remember. Because what bothers me is the whole, oh my gosh, well, the PLM was in power the last 10 years, they didn't do anything about it. The government is made up of 2 sides, the opposition and the government. When an opposition doesn't want to give any constructive suggestions, they're a waste of time. The UNC, for the most part, was a waste of time. The PNM, 9 times out of 10 are a waste of time. Every now and then, you'll get a suggestion here or there. And to be fair, you got similar from the UNC. You got similar from the UNC. But ultimately speaking, With regards to most things, the opposition does not offer anything. It's easy to blame the government. But at the end of the day, I said it before the election, there's two parts, there's two sides of the lower house, technically three for the upper house, in a government, in a legislative body. Just because the opposition has a minority in the House and a minority in the Senate doesn't mean they can't be effective. But similar to the population that doesn't know how to do anything besides vote in the election, our politicians don't really know how to operate outside of election campaigning. That's why we don't have debates in the House anymore. That's why everything is now election campaign bubble. The House has been reduced to another campaign platform. This PH taxi thing should have been something on the front burner years ago. And it shouldn't be this hard to figure something out. Because if it's this hard to figure something out, and I'm not saying that it's an easy problem to find a solution for, I'm saying that it's necessary. If you can't do it, make way for someone who can. The problem is, we, the voters, don't select someone who can. We just magically hope that the rejects from last time are able to sort it out this time. Because, let's be frank, the vast majority of the government slates, they lost elections at one point or another, with very few exceptions. Ironically, the Minister of Homeland Security is one of those exceptions. I think the Minister of Defense might be, well, he might be a senator. So, this is just one thing, and I've used this as an example of condoned lawlessness, and everyone was like, we need it, it's fine, leave it alone, what are we going to do, we can't do nothing about it. Right. How many more has to be attacked, held up by gunpoint, and die before we think, maybe we should do something about it? Let's take that break. When we come back, I want to get into the parliamentary proceedings, because I think that speaks to, well, they both speak to long-term implications that are really bad for the fabric of our democracy and our nation. So I'll get to that conclusion as well. But we'll take a break now. We'll speak about Parliament after this. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Bill and Ruth fell in love with the Benjamin Moore Color Dry Sage, but they tried to match it using another brand's paint.
I mean, it's close enough.
Almost identical, really. Yeah, there it is.
Never trust another paint to be a Benjamin Moore Color.
Trinidad and Tobago, get ready for a musical explosion of freedom, culture, and pure steel band magic.
Featuring 5 of the nation's super bands, plus their talented youth bands.
Get ready for Generations of Steel,
The ultimate celebration of our national instrument.
featuring 5 of the nation's super bands, plus the talented young band.
Experience the power and passion of Desperados,
Shell Invaders,
Massey Trinidad All-Stars,
First Citizens Supernovas,
and the pride of the South, Fun Play. Saturday, July 11th.
at the iconic Grandstand, Queens Park, Savannah.
Save $100 and get your early bird tickets at $200 until Saturday, June 27th.
Get yours now. Available at islandetickets.com.
At Crosby St. James,
All Kenny Sports.
All Extra Foods Supermarket,
Westby, Tagarigua, Athletes by the Park.
Jumbo Foods Barataria,
GAC Electrical, opposite Starlight, Tiggermarkton Main Road.
Mirage Westside Supermarket in Arima.
And all participating bands. Presented by Super Padman, Dane Gulston and Friends. For more info, call 732-3402.
Generations of Steel.
In every victory, there's a story. In every defeat, there's a lesson. And behind every headline, there's a truth waiting to be told. Next week, veteran sports journalist Andre Batiste takes you beyond the scores, beyond the medals, and beyond the controversy in a special multi-episode series. The good, the bad, and the ugly of sports in Trinidad and Tobago. Hear from some of the nation's top athletes, administrators, coaches, and the biggest names in local sport as they share their triumphs, challenges, frustrations, and hopes for the future. Airs Wednesday 10th to Friday 12th at 2:30 p.m. Only on WESN, the content capital.
Knowing how to tell authentic is as easy as 1, 2, 3. Find it, match it, search it. Step 1. Find the style number on the tag. Step 2. Match the style number inside the jersey with the number on the tag. Step 3. Search it. A quick Google search of the style number will verify the jersey is authentic when the search results match the jersey being searched. Don't be fooled by counterfeit jerseys. Before you buy, remember to find it, match it, search it.
Fan Zone, 2 locations nationwide. Center City Mall, Chaguanas and Movietown, Port of Spain. Nationwide delivery available.
Problems trying to get aroused, women
loss
who
of
have
libido.
Loss of libido, and women who have problems actually trying to achieve an orgasm. Something as simple as that. So all of those things tend to happen a little bit further along after the hot flashes and the night sweats, but they are real symptoms. They do exist, and they get pushed under the rug quite a lot. So they are commonly underdiagnosed, they're underreported, they're underdiagnosed, they're undertreated.
In this day of stay-at-home and work from home, home has never meant more than it does today. Whether you're looking to buy, rent, or build your new home, now is the time to get going. Gittins & Gittins real estate agents are here to take you to that place of your dreams. Let us take you home. We help you find that rental to rest along the way, or journey with you to find your home destination. Investors and commercial enterprises too. Call us and we'll walk the distance to place your business in just the right location. Owners, leave the headaches to us. We'll find your tenants or buyers while you stay at home. We'll even manage your property at your bidding. Anything real estate, come home to Gittins & Gittins Real Estate. Call us at 760-3280 or 747-1220 or visit us at 16 Fifth Street in Woodbrook.
I'm back in Talking Point on WSND Content Capital, and one could say that what Mr. Marcel did is an extension of our racial divide that, to be fair to him, yes, I understand all of that I just said, which technically was directed at him, and perhaps it shouldn't have been only directed at him, because he did not create the racial divide. He is merely an expression of it in 2026. What is this, June? Middle of June, 2026. One of the things that I found, I knew that there was always an undercurrent there, but on some level, the racism, more of it was under the surface than out in the open. Some was out in the open, but one of the things that bothers me is the fact that post this election, for whatever reason, and if you wanna blame both political parties, I have no problem with that. If you wanna blame one political party alone, I might take an issue with that regardless of which one you choose. Because I have a hard time saying it's mainly the fault of one and not the other. And it doesn't have to be intentional or direct actions. A lot of it is with regards to the supporters. And again, this is why the opposition leaders come out to say, he is, I'm paraphrasing, expressing the views of his constituents. So this has been brewing with regards to the race relations. And to some extent, it has affected Parliament, first of all. And now part of the question is that to some extent an effect of our race relations with regards to the Parliament? But what happened on Friday? One, I assume this is an anonymous source, prefaced as an expert on the Parliament, right? So some sort of political analyst, political scientist / historian, arguing that, quote, this is the first time in my career that I've seen something like that. To think that a member of Parliament got up and moved out of his seat to take a picture of a member of staff and had him cowering behind his desk. These things don't happen. We follow Westminster, it doesn't happen. The implication of that statement being, it doesn't happen in any Westminster Parliament that the Speaker, to the Speaker's memory, that the Speaker has observed. Right? Speaking under the condition of anonymity, the parliamentary expert who had more than 3 decades of experience in the Parliament strongly defended the employees and said the allegations reflected a misunderstanding of how Parliament's audio system operates and insisted the staff responsible for broadcasting proceedings are trained to apply parliamentary rules equally, regardless of which party occupies government or opposition benches. The expert explained that when the Speaker rises to his feet or attempts to regain control of proceedings, key part there is the second half of that, attempts to regain control of proceedings, all other microphones in the chamber are automatically muted. This is a standard operating procedure. We stick to it in order to protect ourselves from things like this. Whenever the Speaker has control of the floor, nobody else's microphone is on. Now, every time the Speaker stands, the technician switches off all other microphones. You may think it's your microphone alone, but all other microphones are muted because the Speaker must always have control of the floor. This is not some PNM UNC thing. This is how it is done not only in Trinidad and Tobago, but everywhere, Westminster-style legislatures. It is not just one side, but they would not know that because they are seeing only what is before them. Now, unprecedented apparently, according to an anonymous expert. Now, the problem with an anonymous expert is we don't know who the expert is. We cannot assess for ourselves the level of expertise and to what extent we want to weigh this individual's opinion strongly, weakly, disregard it, take it as gospel, somewhere in between. But I think generally speaking, this is not the norm. This is not the norm. Now, and the Speaker did say, this is the first time in my career I have seen. So, if you went through the arduous task of trying to sift through 10 hours of that broadcast, of that live stream, what happened, I was able to find on a news media outlet, social media clip, Minister Paderat's outburst, and then essentially I kind of very briefly listened to what came before it. And essentially, the actual incident in the moment did not seem like anything outside of the norm of Parliament. What made it extraordinary was what Minister Paderat said afterwards. Now, to be fair, what seemingly happened was very simple. There was an issue that caused both sides of the House to argue. The Speaker of the House attempted to regain control as the presiding officer of the proceedings. The Minister Parat's mic, amongst others, turned off, essentially, and you no longer heard them amplified, or you no longer heard them properly in the broadcast, in the live stream period. And you could hear, I believe it is Stuart Young's mic, basically kind of cutting, right? But you did hear him last. So to what extent is it manual switches? They have to go for each one, and it's a timing thing? Or is it a master switch that's supposed to just turn them all off? I don't know. What I do know is what this individual said to the press seemingly is correct. The Speaker basically tried to get everybody to stop talking and to regain control of the proceedings, and the mics were being cut because he started to speak. He didn't stand, but he was not speaking to join in on the argument. He was speaking to try to put an end to the argument. And then I believe this is the front page of The Guardian. We are not biased. Parliamentary staff are denying allegations of bias after claims by leader of government business Barry Padarath that microphones used by government MPs were deliberately muted during parliamentary sittings. Quote, we serve both the government and opposition equally. It matters not to us who is in power or what. We serve both sides equally, and it's as simple as that. Asked how staff felt hearing the accusation, the workers said, we are surprised that that would happen, but at the end of the day, we have our job to do, and that is all. We have a job to do, and that is what we are coming to work tomorrow, that is it today, for the sitting. We are sitting from morning, and we are coming to do our job. It's as simple as that. Now, the proceedings did continue after the situation. A former worker also spoke in this same report to The Guardian. Every time the speaker stands, the technician switches off all the other microphones. You may think it's your microphone alone, but all other microphones are muted because the speaker must always have control of the floor. Now, this situation, seemingly, there are many ways that you could interpret what happened. The most benign way. Minister Padarath, based on what he said, one can speculate on whether or not he even attempted to ask parliamentary staff what the procedure was in order to understand said procedure, in order to better analyze when he perceived that his mic was being cut and the opposition's mics weren't being cut. Because when you have situations like this kind of emotional outburst, that lacks any sort of detailed explanation and the like, these are the kind of things where it makes me think, well, you're upset because you don't actually understand what's going on. You don't actually understand how these things work. So your criticisms are by default inaccurate because you're just throwing out accusations without being able to properly assess the situation on whether or not it is fair or not. That's what it seems like to me. There are more nefarious explanations to be had. First of all, someone has already brought up race into it. I don't even want to go there, to be honest. That's not my go-to, and I think we give the whole racial thing too much credence, even though it's probably more a factor, then I would like to admit I'm going to leave that one alone. Then there is the whole fact that they run into a situation which, again, Colum Imbert as Minister of Finance also ran into, Dr. Keith Rowley as Prime Minister also ran into the potential interference of an independent office holder, in this case the Parliament staff. To what degree, I don't know. To what agenda, I could speculate. Some people might say, I mean, we have to ask, is this appears, this is not dissimilar to what happened to the Auditor General, where you find a way to criticize them, to complain about them in order to replace them. Dare I ask if that is on the table here? Because you don't like when they mute your mic? Because Minister Parra, let me get his choice of words. If you'll forgive me. This biased approach by the staff and the technicians to mute while we speak, and sometimes the audio while it is being played on the Parliament channel, will not be tolerated, and therefore we ask from now, I am signaling that there be a meeting of the Broadcast Committee to treat with these matters. Of course, the opposition basically pulled the same players out of the UNC's handbook when the UNC was in opposition, although it never was with regards to a situation quite like this. This government is a bunch of dictators. They're trying to bully the staff. What is wrong with all you? But I'm trying to get a specific quote where essentially Mr. Pararat said it is not up to the staff to determine what is said in the chamber or what is heard. The problem with that is this. And ironically, as much as I'm speaking about two separate issues that involve Minister Pararat and Mr. Marcel, the most egregious example I have of what I'm now about to speak about included both of them, where Mr. Marcel was saying some sort of bombastic statement, not necessarily to the degree of what he said over the weekend, but some sort of bombastic, over-the-top statement, not necessarily the most constructive thing to say. It got members of the government upset. Then Minister Pararat got on his feet and proceeded to have a shouting match with Kareem Marcel, insisting that Mr. Marcel sit down. The problem is, Leader of Government Business Barry Pararat is not the presiding officer of the House. And he proceeded to go into a shouting match, decrying the conduct of Mr. Marcel, while technically also committing the fault that Mr. Marcel was committing, and that is ignoring the Speaker who stood up in an attempt to regain control of the proceedings that day. And the Leader of Government Business essentially ignored the Speaker because he felt it fit that he will act as the pseudo-presiding officer in that moment. That's how it looked. Demanding Mr. Marcel sit down. With what authority, I have no idea, because again, he is not the presiding officer. And here is now the point that the lower thirds is basically making. This whole thing is not whose mic was muted, whose mic was not muted, because it seemed as though, one, everybody's mic was eventually muted, and two, without necessarily being given any sort, and I could be wrong, right? I only looked at it this morning, but I did not see any indicator that the Speaker acknowledged Minister Padrath. And yet we heard him clear as day. So now we do have to wonder, is the opposition's concerns about intimidation valid? So the situation happened fast. Before the Speaker could get control of the House, Minister Padrath decided to go on his rant about his mic being muted, ironically, with a mic that was on. And it makes me think the issue here is not that a mic was muted, whose mic was muted. It was the fact that essentially both sides of the House were more than happy to continue arguing and ignore the Speaker. Both sides. Because like I said, Stuart Young, if my memory is correct and my hearing is correct and my judgment is correct, he was also continuing to speak and his mic was cutting off. Two wrongs don't make a right. But then, Minister Padrath decides, oh, no, it must be an agenda. The staff of Parliament who work under the Speaker, our Speaker, must have an agenda against us like they did when we were in opposition. Make that make sense to me. Because we didn't necessarily actually get the help files. How is it that now that you're in government, the Red House has an agenda against you? To me, that was the most important takeaway. The fact that the Speaker has a hard time having control over the House, over this committee. But more importantly, it's one thing for the opposition to give the Speaker a hard time and the Speaker to respond in kind, and then we'll debate if the Speaker is biased against and if the opposition is going too far and being unreasonable, blah, 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 blah. It's another thing when I look at situations where the Speaker is getting pressure or being put in a difficult position or have to work hard when trying to corral members of his own side. Now at this point, why do we have a Speaker? Maybe they should just let Minister Padrath be the Speaker. And done. Why are we bothering? Because part of the issue is, and listen, I go back and forth on this. There have been times when I appreciate the Speaker of the House. There have been times when he appears biased to me against the opposition, biased for the government. I do wonder if he's in a no-win situation. Because here's the thing with regards to the government, and you could say this was also true under the PNM. Maybe it was a little bit more subtle. It seems very apparent that they have drawn lines in the sand. And if you are not for them, it doesn't matter if you're not for the PNM. You're just going to be labeled as an enemy, to be blacklisted. Potentially also labeled as a PNM, even if you spent 4 years criticizing the PNM. Up and down the airwaves, over every and anything. To the point where it makes me wonder if the Speaker basically has to walk a very fine line. He can't be totally objective, but he can't be totally biased for the government. So he's trying to be somewhere in the middle of that. Not in the middle, which would technically be objectivity. He's off to the side of objective. That's how it comes across. Because he does not have positive control over the situation. Because even members of the government bench feel free to not just talk over him, but feel entitled to talk over him. Because that essentially is the implication of the timing of Minister Padrath's statement. How dare his mic get muted? I'm sorry, but if your mic is muted and the opposition is not, technically speaking, that saves you from being exposed as someone who is ignoring the Speaker, and it exposes the opposition as someone who is ignoring the Speaker. That would be politically sleazy, but technically brilliant. But no. We have to make it clear. How dare you mute our mics? We have a right to talk, to act like this is a fish market, even when the speaker is trying to regain control of the sitting. Because that's what was happening in the moment, when the mics were starting to be muted. Now, maybe I'm wrong. That's what I saw. So I don't know if a criminal charges or the like is warranted on something like this, although it is touching on things that should not be disregarded or discredited so easily. Because interfering with Parliament staff on this level, one could say it's the pot calling kettle black, because they had their own version of intimidation with regards to any sort of public servant, independent or otherwise, with regards to the PNM and their time. But I don't care if the PNM, what they have to say on the issue, or rather, what they say on it does not make the issue right or wrong. Just because you have to disagree with PNM doesn't then mean whatever point they say is automatically, it has to be considered wrong. Because forget what they say, I saw it with my own eyes, the ridiculousness. If you're members of the government, you should be more disciplined, have more respect, show more respect for the authority of the speaker that you chose. Not just as low, or potentially even less. And at the end of the day, for individuals like Kareem Marcel, they're new to the game, right? They're rookies. They don't know nothing. I mean, that potentially implies they're incapable, but that's a whole separate debate. But some of the government ministers have been around the block for 1 to 2 administrations now, and seems to be more than happy to devolve and descend into the madness, as opposed to letting order come to pass and proper propriety, observation of the procedures be the norm. Of course, the Prime Minister has backed Minister Parak's claim, similar to how the opposition leaders backed Kareem Marcel's statements. Although she has been more direct, basically saying, yes, it happened to me, it happened to me. Again, I don't know to what extent. Have you all talked to the staff? Have you all had anyone actually observe what's going on, objectively try to get to the bottom of this? Or is it just something that you like to complain about? You're the government, for pity's sake. The kind of complaints they have of this issue, it's almost as though they themselves can't get over the fact that they won the election, and they're forgetting that they're not in opposition anymore. Because again, opposition is easy. It's almost like if they wish they were back there. If we were in opposition, we wouldn't have to deal with all of this mess. We would just collect our checks, say whatever nonsense we have to say in whatever sitting, and then go home. Now we have to actually be responsible for policy. And so far, it seems as though the public is not totally on board with everything that we do. Oh my gosh, how are we supposed to deal with all this criticism? It's too much for us to bear. That's why we hide, even more than the last administration. Because that's the easy way out. Being a government is too hard. It's a boiling point where whoever controls the mics, you are hearing the opposition speakers and you weren't hearing the government speakers. Right? This is coming from Mr. Lee. And I would argue the speaker was speaking. And that means all of you need to shut the up. The story should be, why was the opposition continuing to speak? But no, you all decide to expose yourselves. We want to be part of the bacchanal too. We want to be part of the commerce too. We want to be part of the disregarding of the rules too. We want to be just as unprofessional as the opposition, if not more so. Let's go to the next topic quick, and I want to just kind of switch gears. Because look at what these two things imply. Here's the thing. You could blame whatever you want to blame on the PNM. Parliament has looked worse and worse over time. And it's continuing to look worse. This is not a single party problem. This is a Parliament problem. This is a Parliament problem, and one could argue that yes, some of the fruits, some of the seeds planted to get us here was what happened in Parliament the last 10 years and beyond. However, when you elect a new government, the idea is improvement, no? And if an opposition is supposed to prove themselves to be ready to be the government in waiting, they should also improve their game, no? So what is it about Parliament where it seems as though the standards, everyone has decided collectively, the standards have dropped. We don't need to follow the standards anymore. Both sides. But then there's also going back to the Kareem Marcel topic on racism. I'm sorry. Here's the thing. Let's be real now, right? I'm half Chinese, 1/4 Irish, 1/4 black. The black Caribbean side of me wasn't necessarily a poor family. It was a industrious, capable family that, ironically, that's where we were able to have a middle class, upper middle class lifestyle. My racial mix and the background of my ancestors makes me somewhat of an outsider to all of this. I am not East Indian. I will not be recognized by the majority of Afro-Trinbagonians as being as such. And half of me is of a race that is a true minority in this country. I have no stake in the racial divide. I have no stake in the racial fight. I have no contracts or jobs or job offers or positions or board appointments. I have none of that. We don't get favors. I don't have no uncle with no fancy favors and whatever business. No siblings, no parents, none of that. Nobody I know in my family has a position that they're not qualified for based off of politics. They're just there to collect a check. I have no skin in this game. I am neutral. I am an outsider to everybody. And I'm telling you, I have seen the situation get worse. I've seen the racial divisions get worse. And on some level, it's not necessarily directed at me. But I still see it getting worse regardless. Now, am I supposed to just be quiet? It had nothing to do with me. I'll just stay in my corner, stay in my very limited lane and not say anything about it? Or am I going to identify the fact that things like this, if they grow, will only make our national situation worse? If we cannot respect each other of various creeds and races of different demographics, if we cannot respect the political system in the halls of Parliament, where does that leave our country? This is why, on some level, if not for the fact that other countries in the world also have similar nonsense going on with their politics, I might regret staying here a lot more than I already do. But anyway, let me end this talk here because I'm over my time. Our media ambassador is here, so we'll welcome him when we return after this.
Trinidad and Tobago, get ready for a musical explosion of freedom, culture, and pure steel band magic.
Featuring 5 of the nation's super bands, plus their talented youth bands.
Get ready for generations of steel.
The ultimate celebration of our national instrument.
Featuring 5 of the nation's super bands, plus the talented young band.
Experience the power and passion of Desperados,
Shell Invaders,
Massey Trinidad All-Stars,
First Citizen Supernovas,
and the pride of the South, Fun Play. Saturday, July 11th
at the iconic Grandstand, Queens Park, Savannah.
Save $100 and get your early bird tickets at $200 until Saturday, June 27th.
Get yours now. Available at ICNTT.com.
At Crosby St. James.
All Kenny Sports.
All Extra Foods Supermarket.
Westby, Zagarigua, Athletes by the Park.
Jumbo Foods, Barataria.
GAC Electrical, opposite Starlight, Tiggermarkton Main Road.
Mirage Westside Supermarket in Arima.
And all participating bands. Presented by Super Panman, Dane Gulston and Friends. For more info, call 732-3402.
Generations of Steel.
In every victory, there's a story. In every defeat, there's a lesson. And behind every headline, there's a truth waiting to be told. Next week, veteran sports journalist Andre Batiste takes you beyond the scores, beyond the medals, and beyond the controversy in a special multi-episode series. The good, the bad, and the ugly of sports in Trinidad and Tobago. Hear from some of the nation's top athletes, administrators, coaches, and the biggest names in local sport as they share their triumphs, challenges, frustrations, and hopes for the future. Airs Wednesday 10th to Friday 12th at 2:30 p.m. Only on WESN, the content capital.
Problems trying to get aroused, women
loss
who
of
have
libido.
Loss of libido, and women who have problems actually trying to achieve an orgasm. Something as simple as that. So all of those things tend to happen a little bit further along after the hot flashes and the night sweats, but they are real symptoms. They do exist, and they get pushed under the rug quite a lot. So they are commonly underdiagnosed. They're underreported, they're underdiagnosed, they're undertreated.
In this day of stay-at-home and work from home, home has never meant more than it does today. Whether you're looking to buy, rent, or build your new home, now is the time to get going. Gittins & Gittins real estate agents are here to take you to that place of your dreams. Let us take you home. We'll help you find that rental to rest along the way, or journey with you to find your home destination. Investors and commercial enterprises too. Call us and we'll walk the distance to place your business in just the right location. Owners, leave the headaches to us. We'll find your tenants or buyers while you stay at home. We'll even manage your property at your bidding. Anything real estate, come home to Gittins & Gittins Real Estate. Call us at 760-3280 or 747-1220 or visit us at 16 Fifth Street in Woodbrook.
Welcome back. We are talking about on WSN. Joining me is ASP Christopher Arun. And the topic is interesting because I actually was now speaking to him off air that I'm depressed after what went on Friday and over the weekend, right? With our two interesting outbursts, right? One was a sustained planned event and the other one was a short, quick display of poor judgment, in my opinion. And it has left me depressed because, A, these are the people, essentially, that write our laws, right? I mean, obviously, the procedure is not quite that simple. They're the ones that vote on it. They're the ones that pass the legislation. They're the ones that present legislative agenda. Hell, one of them is leader of government business. Think about that for a second, just by the way. Right? It's depressing. So, no, to try to get me off of the rhetorical bridge that I'm just hanging off of right now by a hair thread, we're to talk about men's mental health. A big topic, actually.
Your viewers and your staff, your colleagues. Well, of course, today, you know, I'm not 100% healthy with the virus, trying to fight the virus and whatnot.
Okay.
But at the end of the day,
one more thing.
At the end of the day, I'm a man.
Yes.
And I have to be here.
Mm.
And you're a man, and you have to be here. So, nonetheless, whatever going on throughout the country, in Parliament, and whatever have you frustrated, I didn't catch the entire program this morning, but nonetheless, you have to be here, you know, and you have to avoid being depressed. And, you know, we have tips on how to help men to avoid depression and seek assistance and whatnot. At the end of the day, you know, you have to do what you have to do. You have to be a host of the program, and you need to, you know, balance that thought and that lifestyle and, you know, the issues that would affect you, and, you know, how best you could address it. You know, first of all, we want men out there to be less stressed, which it's a difficult thing to happen now. You know, if maybe everybody else could help, maybe the other genders could give you a ease up for the month, you know, the month of June.
Careful now.
Yeah. You know, there are a number of things that we spoke about off air, and one of them was mental health for men. And we have some tips. You know, definitely June is men's mental health month. Tips for men, especially those in the Toronto Big Police Service, who, you know, go out there tirelessly with a lot of effort. So they have home to deal with, they have work to deal with, and work is not an easy kettle of fish.
Well, I mean, first of all, you, given your health
Yeah.
issues, are still working long hours.
Yeah.
But then I mentioned, and I say this semi-regularly, I can't follow all of the crime and the murders in the news. It will bother me. Or I will get numb to it, and that will bother me. And I just remember when we started speaking about the death of the 12-year-old girl, you know, I don't know if the viewers picked it up, but I could see you were going back into your past job.
Yeah.
And you had first-hand experience, not of the case, but of that kind of scenario.
Yeah, of course,
your knowledge, of course, is going to be there at the forefront of your mind, and it's. I think one of the things is for a job like the police, it can. We underestimate how much it will wear down on police officers.
Yeah, it does, because it took me back. I mean, the caller did, you know, go into it a lot, how she felt, especially about the country, and it took me back to, like, some of the cases we had to investigate. We investigated deaths of children, penetration of children, sexual abuse, physical abuse. I remember one of the cases I dealt with, the child was 3 years old, if so old, and the alleged offender is her stepmom, and a professional. And, you know, we had to do the investigation. And I remember she being in ICU, and on the way to ICU to see her, because I had to do daily checks. We call it a welfare check. We don't just call in the hospital and say, you know, look, how is my survivor, or how is so and so. we actually visit them. And I had to visit her at the hospital. And on the way there, I had to drop off a police vehicle for servicing. And the customer service at that location was really bad. And they had me waiting like half an hour, and I had to tell the young lady, I said, you have me waiting. But my mind was in the hospital. My mind was at the hospital, concerned about the child. She's 3 years old. She's in ICU. She's on death's bed. Oh, yeah. And I was wondering, what's going on. And the young lady didn't appreciate how I corrected her for having me waiting so long. And I just, listen, I have to get this done. You need to take the police vehicle. I need to get to the hospital. And there was no urgency on her part. And these are the things that police officers have to deal with. We have to deal with everybody out there while thinking about what our duties, our official duties, to attend to. And I remember I was really concerned about her because, I also had a young child at the time.
Right.
So, it was working on, but you have to do what you have to do. So as a police officer, you understand your duty. Your duty is your duty at the end of the day. And although it affects you mentally, physically, emotionally, you have to get the job done. And I remember my senior calling me and asking me, how is the child? And I said, and we were at it over the phone, and I was telling him, he said, what's going on with the survivor? What's going on? I said, she's okay. She's progressing. And we were at it on the phone over some issue. And I said, that's my survivor. I will deal with it. I'm addressing it now. And, I had to put on my foot to make sure that what the police investigation was ongoing is that we were taking the survivor's health and interests first before we went on to I think they wanted me to go after the perpetrator immediately, but we had to give it some time. We needed her to heal and to get some information from her and that kind of thing. And I had to stand up for her and get that information, before I moved on. So it's part of the investigation. Sometimes you have issues and whatnot. But again, as police officers, we deal with the worst, and we deal with the best.
I feel as though, and it's not just police, you could say firefighters, any sort of emergency response, military, anyone has to deal with those kinds of extraordinary situations. The public kind of takes it for granted.
Yeah, I remember there was a fire in Port of Spain early in my career. I think it was a hostel, and there were burnt bodies there. And I remember the fire officers having to assist the coroners. And, we're talking about bodies that fell apart as you held them.
Right.
So you're taking them out of the fire to put them in body bags, and they fell apart. So the fire officers also experienced their fair share of trauma,
But that's the thing, we kind of view it as they're not supposed to be traumatized. This is what they're paid for. And because you collect a check with this job title, you're supposed to be trained to deal with this, right? Magically somehow.
Yeah. Well, in the TTPS, we have victim and witness support unit that assists us with dealing with trauma. We have psychologists, social and welfare psychologists in the TTPS that speaks to us. Like if we're in a shooting, so example, if we're involved in an active shooting and whatnot, we get counseling. So also the other law enforcement departments and whatnot. I think there's a department for that as well in each that comes together for law enforcement, and you have that you have secondary trauma, you have third party trauma and whatnot that we experience, and we have to talk about it, we have to get it out there. I remember being involved in shootings, and we had to go to see the psychologists and explain how we felt and how we're feeling now, and how we can move on and that kind of thing. I remember police officers, and I don't think they get enough trauma counseling, to be honest. I remember there was a case where we had a father kidnap his son. We were looking for him. And the end result was that it is alleged that he buried his son up in a rural district. So we were able to find the grave and whatnot. But these are the things that police officers experience and law enforcement experience out there, especially men. The majority of our colleagues on the ground are men. And they have to experience this. And they have to go back to work normally next day, you know.
Well, I mean, therein lies the interesting juxtaposition of gender roles, right? The majority of murders, both victims and perpetrators, are men. And thus, women can talk about equality all they want. Most of the times, it's the man that has to, what made the noise outside the house? Is there someone outside? What do we do? Now, again, you know, some women are able to deal with it, right? In whatever capacity they choose to.
Right.
But there's that expectation on the man of the house having to handle certain things, and we're not just talking about taking out the trash. And on some level, I do wonder if that potentially now weighs more heavily on young men, not necessarily adults, because in some cases when, you know, the man of the house is a teenager, because there have been situations like that in the past, but I feel in 2026, with the way how things are going, it's a little bit different now.
Well, what you have is, you have men or young men growing up in households without men to teach them how to be men. So that's one issue you have in there. And you see men becoming more emotional, unnecessarily emotional. Nothing wrong with being emotional, but it's how you handle the emotions. It's how you bring it out. It's how you cope with it. It's how you know when to put it aside, address your duty as a man first, and then pick back up that emotional trauma.
It's not about suppressing it forever.
No, it's definitely not.
But there will be situations where you can't fall apart right now.
No, you definitely, you have, we have been in situations, you're in a shootout and you have to secure the person who's been shot. You know, you have to take them for medical care and attention. So sometimes you'll see them putting them, you'll see police officers putting them in the police vehicle and conveying them for medical attention. Because sometimes we can't wait on the ambulance. Because the ambulance, we also know how far the ambulance is. And then, you know, you get to the hospital and, you know, there's sometimes some pause for so that you could now deal with the trauma that you just experienced. And it's not easy because you're there, you have to inform the family that something just happened, and hopefully not a police officer being shot and wounded, that you have to go to the family and say, well, look, our colleague has been shot or injured and is being treated and whatnot, or even have unfortunately passed away or whatever. You have that trauma to deal with, and you always have to put it aside. I've actually experienced putting aside trauma for days just to deal with a situation, deal with an investigation, and then pick back up.
I think most people usually it would be more like a shift, whatever job they're doing. If it's like restaurant work, retail work, although maybe retail work less so, right? But like any kind of service industry, particularly if you're swamped, that's why I said restaurants. Or even performers. So if you're a live performance, a live television show, technically. I mean, look, there have been times when my emotions were ready to get to me with regards to certain pieces of news. And I allowed myself the luxury of displaying it, but I also knew I couldn't break down on camera. It would save no one. It would just be either I can't do my job or I'm grandstanding. Look at how emotional I could be in this moment. It's not useful with regards to what it is I think maybe I could offer the public in terms of talking about an issue like the Paria accident, for instance. And
well, I mean, showing emotions isn't a sign of weakness. It's a sign of being human. Again, as a man, you have to know when to put it aside and deal with it. So, as a law enforcement officer, as a man in society, I have to know when to put it aside. I can show my emotions now, but as you said, it's not going to benefit anybody if it is, you show these emotions and then, you don't deal with it. It's better you show it, put it aside, deal with it, and come back to it. But make sure and express your emotions as a man. That's one benefit of, a positive benefit of expressing yourself as a man in terms of helping you with your mental health wellness.
Now the thing is, and I think we kind of learned by observation in the past, we kind of learned by doing what we were told, and not always understanding it fully. So it wasn't the best way, but it did serve us well, at least to a point. Whereas now, we don't necessarily have that rigid discipline, but the replacement, there's nothing really to replace it. So we kind of have the worst of both worlds, where you mentioned before, young men, they don't have a role model to follow. But also I feel as though in the past, even a single mother would say, look, this is what men are. Whether it was the most accurate analysis or not, that rigid, again, it does its job. It's an okay baseline, not necessarily the most advanced, the best way to do it. But even single mothers might have been able to kind of give a general direction for their sons. Whereas now I feel as though for whatever, and part of it is, look, if both parents have to work more than 8 hours a day, you know, sometimes not even their choice, right? Who then is the man for their young men, right? Because for young women, it's very different, right? And more importantly, when we're speaking about things like school violence and the like, and maybe, you know, it's not pertinent for today because it's men's mental health. School violence will also include young ladies. But then what happens is we see school violence with young men potentially translating to higher levels of crime or entrance into crime, because am I correct to think that it's, to some extent, they don't know how to deal with their own emotions?
Yeah, I mean, men actually don't speak to each other, you know, Sean. You know that, as a man, you know that. You know, we don't go to our dad and say, well, look, dad, I'm feeling this way, I'm that way. Dad doesn't come and say, you know, your father, at the end of the day, you've never actually, I doubt you've ever heard your father said, well, look, you know, I feel like this today. Or, you know, this hurt me. What your mom did to me today.
Not emotionally, physically.
No. Physically,
physical ailments, yes.
Yeah. You know, yeah, of course. And that's far and few in between. Even the physical ailments men experience. Because, I mean, Friday night I fell down, and I actually told barely anybody, look, I fell down. I fell down in the car park at the movies. And that
you told your family?
Yeah, I told one relative. And you know, I fell down, I damaged my hand, I damaged my knees, and it's okay. I had to get back up and move on.
Yeah.
To me, you know, so men don't really speak about their emotions, and that's one issue, like you highlighted, especially with young men growing up in society. They have nobody to talk to. They don't go to another guy and say, well, look, I felt this and I felt that.
Because I do have some friends, we do talk about topics. We don't necessarily say how we feel.
We might talk about politics.
No, but I mean personal stuff. But even then, you know, we're all well over 35.
Right.
Right? We weren't doing this at 17.
Right.
You know what I mean? We didn't know how to do this at 17.
Exactly. So a young man might actually be hurting from a relationship breakup, a relationship that he isn't comfortable with. He basically has nobody to go to say, well, look, I'm uncomfortable.
But what about the stereotype of gangs give us a sense of belonging?
Yes.
Because dare I say, when we're 12, 15, 8, whatever, minors, we don't know how to analyze that void of family.
Right.
We don't know what it means. We just feel it.
And because of that lack of love or the emotional connection you have with the male relatives in your family, you actually get that love out there within the gangs. The gangs support you. They say, well, look, we understand you're a man and you have to provide for your family. So we're going to give you the tools to provide for your family.
I mean, it's not something, when you think about it, they speak to men on the level of those male roles.
Yeah.
You got to protect the block.
Yeah.
You got to protect your family. You got to provide.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they touch on we understand, no touchy-feely here because we're men.
Yeah.
And whatever all of that means. And it's almost like if it's, in a way, it's almost genius how it's geared towards kind of roping in young men.
And to get that commitment from them. So you're going to kill for this gang. You're going to protect this gang at all costs. You're not going to snitch on the gang. You're not going to talk to the police. You're not going to talk to any law enforcement. So whatever you do is for the protection of the gang. So the gang gives you everything. It gives you the food, the money, the clothes, the gears, everything you need to protect you, your family, and the gang.
And now this is the difficult part, I guess you could say. obviously the solution is not, well, we need to send everybody under the age, every male under the age of 25 to a therapist immediately. It's not that simple, right?
No.
Even if there were enough therapists, it's not that simple. It kind of comes back down to, is there a father figure in their life?
Right.
And if not, because one of the things, not necessarily thinking about the topic, but I mentioned the fact that, look, our leaders should be our role models.
Correct.
And even if it's not someone to be physically present, it's someone mentally, emotionally, you see on the screen.
Right.
This is who to aspire to. We don't see how to be in everyday life, but we do see a goal,
and
a representation.
Yes, and these are the positive outcomes of role models, Big Brother programs, the cadets, the Boy Scouts, the programs like the TTPS has the police youth clubs, and we have men that mentor our children in these police youth clubs. But you also need that investment from the family. You just can't drop them off at the police youth club and say, no, let the police youth club fix up. It's like a daycare, no. You need that investment. We need to invest in all aspects of our youth, from birth to preschool, primary school, secondary school, extracurricular activities, every aspect to draw them away from these gangs and to pull them in, make sure they understand this is family is family, family is blood, and we need to protect our family first.
Now let's go back to the other end of the scale now with the fathers themselves. I do wonder if with progression, we don't necessarily have a healthy understanding of a father's role.
Right.
And similar to how we take police officers for granted.
Yeah.
I do wonder if we take fathers for granted.
Well, we do, but nobody teaches you how to be a father. Nobody sits you down and says, okay, as a father, you have to do this. Your own father don't even do that. Your own father doesn't say, well, sit you down and say, well, look, you're a man now, and you have to do this, and you have to do that. You have to behave this way. Your responsibility is to your wife and your child, and the child going to school, and you're making sure that whether you live with the mother or not, you need to tend to your child. You need to provide for your child. Nobody sits a man down.
One thing though, is it, because I am under the impression that maybe some people in other countries and other cultures might do something like that. I'm not doubting you that it doesn't happen here. I do wonder if to some extent it is a local phenomenon or a regional phenomenon.
Yeah, it does seem that in the Caribbean, the machoism of men tends to move away from that machoism culture, that macho culture, being a macho man. You know, it tends to take away from being a real man. It takes away from that showing that emotion. So in other countries, you would see their culture that they sit and actually tell a child how to be a man. You understand? But in Trinidad and in the region, you don't see that. You see men staying away from showing their emotions, from talking about their emotions in a constructive way. Nobody says that you have to cry and you know.
Well, I guess part of the trick or the catch-22 is with for women, to some extent, they kind of figured out at least some level of this is how we communicate these things with each other.
Yeah,
but with men,
women tend to sit in a group and explore every emotion.
Right, but with men, we don't think about it. Say one man decides, I need to talk more. Who is he going to talk to?
Nobody. He doesn't have anybody to
because other men don't know how to have that conversation, and women know how to have the conversation, but they don't know what it's like necessarily, specifically in most cases, to be a man. So a lot of women don't know how to, some do, but a lot don't necessarily know what to say in those situations because their advice from their perspective is not necessarily going to be what a guy needs to hear to deal with his responsibilities.
Yeah, what you're seeing is that it's really a conversation that we have to have. It may take a whole year to really speak about, where men don't speak at all about issues that they're going through. As you say, you still come out and talk about being depressed about what's going on in the conversation right now. But men don't generally do that. They tend not to speak about it, and that's one of the first things you need to do as a man, or as men in society, we need to come out and have relative conversations with persons that we could speak to, we could trust. There are persons we trust. We may not speak to women to appear vulnerable, to feel weak. So we may not have that conversation. But that's the purpose of having a spouse and a significant other. And we don't understand that as men. We need to recognize. Now, it could be used to attack a man. So, you know, men tend not to speak and say, okay, I'm going to speak to my wife or my spouse or my significant other.
So this is crazy, because when you mention spouse, now, obviously, I mean, not to overcomplicate things, if it's a same-sex relationship, that's a whole different kettle of fish. Technically, two men, right? I know some people are going to want to, right? But technically, two men. If it's a man and a woman, the trick is, this is a woman who's, technically, you are supposed to be devoted to each other.
Yeah.
So, whereas you don't necessarily have the same perspectives, you know, in a lot of different things, you all are kind of like the subject matter experts on each other, who better to talk to than to each other.
Right.
But then I think when you brought up an interesting point, to show weakness, it could be used against me.
Of course, yeah.
Like, I do wonder if this is one of those things now where that whole, you're forced to assume the role. This is where we see some of the negatives. Because men would have just, well, you're married and you stay together no matter what, and you kind of make it work because that's what a man does and that's what a marriage is. As opposed to now when we kind of have to start to realize, while we do need to put effort and not just give up at the first challenge of a relationship, if you have to be like, I don't know, she might use this against me in the future, maybe that's not the person you're supposed to marry.
Exactly, and that's the first thing. Maybe that's the first thing. Maybe we need to get into relationships with people that we could trust and that we could have confidence in, and maybe that we could speak to, as opposed to just having a relationship with somebody because they look good. You know, and they are diva, or they seem to they could cook, or they could as I said, they look good. But you need to get into relationships, and that's the first step in any marriage or any relationship or any outcome of a better society. You need to have better relationships with people that you could trust and have confidence in and whatnot.
I mean, trust is also an issue with the workplace.
Yeah.
Because I feel certain workplace environments.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, especially big organizations.
Yeah.
That could be a source of a lot of stress for men and women.
Yeah.
But funny enough, again, women at least kind of, they have a practice that they start from young of talking, and men don't. And I'm sure a lot of guys, like, they don't even know where to begin with the office drama, because I'm a guy. I'm not supposed to gossip about office drama.
Yeah, definitely. You don't see that happening. Like, you know, unless, you know, you're really into it, I guess. But men tend to stay away from those conversations and that behavior and whatnot. So you see, even in the workplace, you see that chaos amongst the women as opposed to amongst the men. So.
Well, the flip side is there's a lack of chaos, but there's also a lack of communication. So it's like one situation has its pros and cons, and the other one has its pros and cons.
We definitely need to get men speaking to each other first. Yeah? So again, first thing, building a proper relationship with your significant other, and making sure that is the person you really want to get married to or have a relationship with or even have a child with. And then, you know, as men, you need to know how to, you need to start to practice that speaking to each other. Like, we need to get, I mean, we could have a beer together. I don't drink alcohol, but nonetheless, we could have a drink together and still not talk. Men could sit down here, we could sit down here and talk, and the entire day and not talk about our emotions.
Yeah. But, and I guess...
So we need those safe spaces.
I mean, safe space is a word that has at times been used in very deconstructive ways, but I understand the concept. I'll say this, men, I think adult males, particularly those who want to be fathers, do need to start building up that skill with their peers. Because they have to try to impart it on their sons. Otherwise, it's going to be that case where, what's the inheritance you're leaving for your child? Why does he have to start from scratch with regards to something that might actually be more fundamental to his being than we might appreciate now?
I've seen men erupt into violence and emotions because they basically have nobody to speak to.
Yeah.
They have no way out. Speaking, Sean, me telling you my financial issues or my medical issues doesn't help me.
So that's a thing that we don't necessarily appreciate. At some point, some men not knowing how to deal with the stress will lash out. Now, with women, it might be with words, but with men, it might be more than words.
Right, yeah. And then you see men lashing out. Long ago, you saw a man arguing with his wife, right? And the argument had nothing to do with her. It had nothing to do with her. It was him lashing out and getting the frustration off his chest.
Yeah.
And she being a wife, and this is, we talking about 40 years ago, right? And she being a wife understood it wasn't about her. Now, with the emotions running high and people not communicating properly, you know, they misconstrue it and whatnot. And the man doesn't know how to really speak out. So he lashes out in anger. And then, you know, your partner thinks it's about them. And then it worsens the situation.
Well, in part because when a woman is busy with her own job as well, you have two people dealing with stress from work, stress of life.
Yeah. So the dynamics have changed.
Yeah. You don't have one that doesn't suffer through those things, that's then able to generate a buffer for their partner for those things. When both are suffering for those things, you can end up with a mess.
Apparently it was understood that the lashing out had nothing to do with the other person, and you know, the marriages worked. As opposed to now, where you see more than 50% of marriages ending in divorce.
Well, I mean, you know, I don't think all of the marriages worked in that scenario because some of it could have been quite negative. But but yes, there was something about not being quick
to divorce,
to make a rash decision just in general. Right? And being more tolerant. For better or worse. I think it is for better and for worse. And perhaps that's where it started off for us. Because when our fathers and grandfathers didn't necessarily learn certain tools, there was no one to pass it on down. So now, you know.
So we're lashing out still, and it's being misconstrued.
But to some extent, it seems like it might be getting worse in the sense of, is it maybe the stresses causing the response to escalate?
I think so. I think the stresses on both parties making it worse. I think you have a caller, Tisha.
Do we have a call?
Yeah, from Arima.
Sorry. Just have some issues with our volume. Caller, good morning, on here.
Hi, good morning, Sean. Good morning to Mr. Christopher, the ASP there.
Morning.
Yeah, my thing is that this parliament, I don't know what to say again, huh? They kicks in all the way in parliament. You know, it had a song before. They sang about the kicks in parliament, and you're seeing the same thing. Just imagine big people, educated people, they have no respect for the Speaker of the House at all. Whenever he talks like they're fighting for this box lunch, they want to see which box lunch have the biggest piece of meat. You can't sit down and watch the parliament respectable at all. Big people fighting, getting on a fish market way in parliament. But anyhow, the speaker has to deal with it in a proper way too. Whenever he talk and say something, right? Don't talk 2 and 3 times. He has to put on his foot there too, because I find it very disrespectful. I'm talking about the both PNM and the UNC. I can't leave out one and say one. It's the both of them, right? They're two very disrespectful, and that is not good enough. When the little children see that, and they go to school and they start to fight, that is what's going on, kicking in parliament right through. But anyhow, on our next topic now, on a trend, what I see taking place in this country. You know, the trend is young people putting their parents in home more frequently now. That's going on. You understand? After the parents stand up, work so hard to get their children get them educated. When they reach a certain stage in their life, for the children to stand up with their parents, boy. I've seen that going on and on. Sometimes you talk to somebody 2 months ago. When you catch yourself and you ask about the person, they put the person in a home. You understand? They put in the parents in homes now to take over the home. It's not to say all parents. Sometimes you reach a certain stage in your life, right? And you know, sometimes some people really at it. They're really gone. But sometimes it has some people again, they have their senses and they know what they're about to. When they catch themselves, they're in a home. They're in a home. They will die faster in a home because you know why? When they're home by them, right? They're seeing people, they have friends they could talk to. But when they're in a home and they catch themselves, they can't even ask the person in a home to give them a phone call. Because you know why? They will tell themselves they're losing all that money. Them ain't getting no phone call. I find they should have a law in this country. They having laws for everything in this country. They're doing all kind of things. So they should have a law that people reach a certain age, right? Let them decide. It's not all of them could decide, but let them, those people who collective, who's sensible, let them decide if they want to stay in the house or go in a home. I don't know. The children have a way, boy. They have a way now. I ain't want mommy by me. I ain't want auntie by me. So put them in a home. So I will get the house and things. Get them away. I find that is bad. They should have a law in this country now. Do something about that. Because it have plenty old people not supposed to be in a home. And when they're in the home, they're dying fast. They're dying fast because they're taking on. Right? That is my contribution today.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Elder abuse is a serious issue in Trinidad. I mean, at the Special Victims Department, we had investigated some cases. And, you know, you're seeing elder abuse at the homes, at some of these homes.
Yes.
Not all, some of these homes. I speak to elders where I go to the hospitals and whatnot. And you're hearing them talking about the abuse they suffered at these homes and whatnot. I would have identified cases where, you know, we saw elder persons being manipulated into and being tricked into handing over their property, into signing over their property to strangers. I remember there was this case where a young lady was going around and she was actually looking for elderly persons, and she saw one in a gallery there, and she went after them. And when he sent that to me, befriend them, and a relative ended up coming out and said, what are you doing here? This is my relative, what are you doing here? And I think there was some chaos and whatnot, and they had to throw her out of the premises, and she was saying, well, this is my friend. And this lady was just passing around looking for elderly persons to trick them into signing over their property to them.
I think...
And you see that a lot.
It's also some households are now, they can't function like how they used to. So it's, and again, not all homes are good institutions.
And I remember speaking to colleagues in the hospital, and they said that they would have an increase of elderly patients around Christmas and Carnival.
Claxton Bay on the line. We'll speak more about that, but there's an obvious implication there. Claxton Bay, good morning. You're on here.
Join on to the officer.
Morning.
Morning.
Right? You know, three things I want to sum up what the officer was saying before. If we could sum it up in 3 words. You see that discipline, tolerance, and production. Discipline number 1. If we did keep, plenty of people hate Dr. Eric Williams because of all kind of things. But if we did keep up those 3 words, discipline was 1. That if I come before you, Sean, and I say, good morning, sir, and you have to relate to me after, you understand? I respect. You understand? But when we tell people, and it comes from homes, homes telling people not to respect this one because you're better and all this kind of nonsense. This is where our country come to. Now here it is. Look how simple it is. We have a leader today, our Prime Minister, right? How much things she said in the past and never come and say she's sorry, never apologize. And when the other side say things, they want them to apologize. How that could be? Now you have members in the parliament. This same Jack Davison as a member. How you can have a person like that in the parliament? How you can have plenty others? That is why the parliament is in that kind of uproar. Because people don't have no respect for one another because they're recognizing that these people have crimes, they have all kind of thing upon them, and then you're in an office that we should respect you. They wouldn't want to have no respect. All that is making this country go the way it is. If the officer want me to have respect for him, he had to do the same thing for me. He can't come to me and no kind of thing and cussing and all. And the other thing that we have in this country here, we have people, they continue to go by black people place and they will kick down the door, but will never come by you, Sean, neither by the officer and do that. They wouldn't do that. You understand? They will come and present whatever recommendation they have before they could come and enter in your home. We need to have respect for everyone. We are all human. That is the first and foremost. And a lot of people not seeing that. So our country is going away because it's the way we think, the way we look at each other, and the way we believe from homes that we are better than this one. So we could do that and do the other. Until we get all these things right, Sean, this country is going nowhere far, you know. It is going nowhere far. Thank you.
Thank you, caller.
Yeah, I mean, one of the callers made that point, you know, how we behave in public for these children to really see.
Well, consider this one, when you're chucking your parents, your elderly parents in a home because you want to go to a carnival fest. Right, which is one of the implications of that statistic. I don't understand why Christmas, though.
Right.
You would think Christmas is when, But basically, to sum up, one of the two things I got from the last caller there was, I do wonder if we're teaching our children to be disrespectful and to be racist. Right? And the racism doesn't have to be heavy and obvious, you know, it can be very minor.
Subtle.
But the point is, for a child, it doesn't need to be big. It can start small and...
Children are definitely taught to be racist, to be honest.
It's either taught or it's out of ignorance, and ignorance racism can be solved a lot easier. San Fernando, the line caller, good morning. Morning.
Morning, Sean.
Morning.
Morning, ASP Arun.
Hi, good day.
Good topic. Let me say this, ASP Arun. This issue of male mental health is something that has worried me for quite a while. Because I come from a situation where I was taught the value of male camaraderie in terms of, well, I came from my primary school days, I came through organizations like the Cub Scouts, Scouts, Venture Scouts, other organizations, cycling clubs, and that type of thing, athletics. So there was always a bonding which I am not seeing today because the main, imagine in Trinidad and Tobago now, the main organization for, as far as I'm concerned, to try and harness or bring together youth is the police youth club. I'm applauding that.
I understand what you're saying.
While chastising all the other organizations. And the people, because a lot of times, ASP Arun, what happens in these organizations, you have, there's no continuity. Because when I used to be a scout, and when I reached the stage where I gave back, I went back into it. to support.
Yeah, you're not seeing that.
Well, you need the organization, the support they need. Not everybody can be a leader in the organization, but you can be a supporter of the organization. You involve.
Yeah,
My son was a scout, and so you get yourself involved and giving back, and that is how you create a cycle where men are helping create better men.
Yeah, correct.
And this is not happening in the society today.
No,
it
you're
is
seeing
not
that at
happening.
all. No. You don't even see good
And
guys.
hence the reason why the police had to become mentors as well.
Yeah.
Because the police service is everything in Trinidad and Tobago now.
Yeah.
We see them as the heroes and the criminals and prop up everything. Have a problem in school, put police in the schools.
Yeah.
This is the issue in Trinidad and Tobago, where not enough men are mentoring younger men.
Correct.
And we have this cycle of we think that they're going out of control. There's not enough men getting involved in we're going back to basics, like as fathers. Rondell Fields, we listen to Rondell Fields speak about the Single Father Association. You're going from there, coming forward. Men have to start to give back.
Correct.
To their own.
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
They have to. That this camaraderie is not there. Let me tell you. I when I grew up, I still have my friends, my real core friends are people that I knew from primary school up to today. I have had friends, some of them passed away now because I have friends, older friends, I have friends in the 90s. People used to ask me, why are you friends with these old people?
Yeah.
If they only understand the kind of friendship an older person can give you, the kind of knowledge, the kind of support.
Yeah.
And that is what is missing in the society today. Men are not giving back to their own. They're not. Sometimes a man, if you are a friend, you see a guy you're dealing with every day, something off. You can't say that's none of my business, you know. Sometimes you have to ask him, what's going on, boy? What, everything all right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Give him the opportunity to say something.
Yeah.
If that's really a friend, you have to be a friend. You have to be a brother's keeper.
Yeah, and
you have to be a brother's keeper. And I say this, Sean, let me say it again. When I think I still live by was my promise as a scout. I promised to do my best, to do my duty to God, well, used to be the Queen and my country, to help other people and to keep this law. And the law was for a Cub Scout. A Cub Scout always does his best, thinks of others before himself, and does a good turn every day.
Yeah.
That was so basic as it was. Basic. I still live by that. I live by that all through my life.
Yeah, I remember.
And it is not hard, you know.
Yeah.
That is not hard. That is not something hard to do, you know.
I remember in church we had
that is not something hard to do at all.
We had men's group in church.
Be your brother's keeper.
We had
good program, gentlemen.
Yeah.
Thank you, caller.
I mean, maybe we need to have more men's, because the TTPS actually launching its men's bureau soon.
Sometimes the answers are, or some of the answers are quite obvious.
Yeah.
Now, I understand, I don't know if a church group is equipped to deal with this angle of male youth development.
Well, I mean,
right?
Yeah, but
because I was a part of many church groups.
Right, but not necessarily the church, you know. I mean, we're talking about all organizations.
Right, but I'm just saying, and in part, I think that the deficiencies that a church group would have, it's not that church is deficient. It's that if society has blind spots, right, their primary focus is not general men's mental health. So they're going to have those same blind spots on the general mental health
but you see,
topic.
No, but you see a lack of these men's group and men's...
What is traditionally the obvious, readily available, apparent, social group for men to be men and to have camaraderie and teamwork and brotherhood? Sports. And what do we basically play the fool with?
Sports.
There you go. Because it's not just the pickup sides and your team and whatever, but like on some level that's fine for socialization. But development for young people, it really is more something a bit more organized, where part of the curriculum of the activity is the discipline and the learning how to work together, right? Back to one of the other corners, right? And the brotherhood comes from the adversity of not just, oh, well, you know, we're not over 50 tournament. No, this is the intercall or whatever. You only have so many bites of this apple. This means something. Everybody put in an effort, right? We're young and we're strong and we want this and we need this and we have the drive for this. And not all of us will succeed and there will only be one winner at the end of the tournament. But the process of going through that, it teaches you failure. It teaches you brotherhood. It teaches you so much. And what have we done to sports? We have basically gutted it.
Yeah. And you're seeing our young men not participating, not just in sports. We're talking about all fours.
Anything,
anything that brings men together. You're seeing a breakdown of that. You're not seeing young men. So you're seeing older heads. As one of the callers said, you know, he had a relationship with older persons. You're seeing the older heads there, and you're not seeing the young persons there. One of the things I've always said is that a home, an elderly home, and a preschool should be next to each other. They should share the same yard. They should share the same yard. To teach the young children how to respect elders and to give back life to those elders by getting involved in the lives of these young children. Because you see in Japan, you see that they do that. So there's an aging population in Japan, and they teach the preschoolers from very young how to treat with elderly. So they have a lot of respect for their elders. And the elders have a lot of respect for these children, and they incorporate them into the same compound. So it's basically they share the same yard, and the preschoolers will go across and visit the elderly, and so forth. And because I mean the elderly can't really walk across to the preschool. So they come across and they sing these childhood songs and these what they call nursery rhymes, and they get back that sense of family and belonging. So this is the benefit to the elderly.
Also, like, to some degree, a mentor.
Yeah. And then the kids now, they learn to really respect the elders because the elders are very respectable towards them and they're respectful. So they teach the young people how to be respectful.
But I feel as though it's almost like a cycle.
It's a cycle.
And if you don't keep the cycle up, it breaks very easily, and then it's really hard to restart the cycle. Because we've spoken about sports already. It's not only do you have highly organized sports have benefits, but then also sports programs to give kids something to do, to be more constructive than just lying on the block in the afternoons and at night. So there's a lot of benefits there. And there are probably other examples that I can't think of right now, because, and it's similar to with the elder abuse situation, where not all of it might be intentional. Not all of it is meant to take the money out from underneath their parents. But some of it is like, well, you know, I have kids of my own and I just don't have time. And both of us work. And then you don't intend to put them in a bad home, but it's a crapshoot, right? Some of the homes are just bad. And then you don't treat with the situation. Your elder gets into a really bad situation. Some of the homes, there are homes in America where that is where the grandparents have been living for years. Right, I know one travel YouTuber, I think her grandmother has been there for like 20 years. They party all the time.
Right.
They should be using more protection and face the consequences for that a lot more than you would think. Right? But not all old folks home is like that. And in Trinidad, how many is anything close to that, right? And I think that's part of it too. Like the same thing about not having enough time for the kids, not enough time for the elders. But back in the day, to what you just said, to have the elders in proximity. We didn't need to locate the homes to the schools. It was done automatically. My old aunties lived with us. You know, and when they passed away as a child, it was something hard, but you still had that experience of them.
What is very concerning, Sean, and something that Trinidad needs to look at is that we have a growing elderly population. And you see that from the where they want to raise the pension. The age of pension, I believe. And the reason for that is because we don't have enough young people to support the pension plan. So, you know, you have to work longer. So as opposed to France, I think it's what, 70 years or something. I think Trinidad is going up to 63 or something like that. So we're having a growing aging population, elderly population, and a low birth rate. And then the young people that we're trying to get, to be part of society in a positive way, it's not working out that way. So is it that in the future we're going to have less active, proactive, healthy, strong young people? Or are they all going to be involved in some kind of,
This is a conundrum for, and we'll take the comments after this and to close out the show. This is a conundrum for a lot of countries.
Yeah.
Right? I think for us, first of all, there is this, Russian/German/Trini lady who everybody should know it is, right? And one of the things that I think we underestimate our own country.
Yeah.
And that's part of the reason why we've made certain decisions.
Yeah.
And ironically, if we were abroad, we might make better decisions as a collective.
Yeah.
But we don't, because we don't have that faith in ourselves.
Right.
And it goes back to that vicious cycle thing, right? But that's a conundrum that we have to meet head on. And part of it is what's making it worse is not only could young people not get jobs, but some give up trying to get jobs.
Yeah, they're
it's
giving
too
up.
hard.
Yeah,
how do we then pay NIS and all of these things without that?
Yeah.
So it's just something that we have to face because there's very real consequences.
I have some numbers to share. I would have sent it to you for to assist men with
some phone up, right? Some phone
numbers. So
numbers.
we have Lifeline 645-2800 and the National Suicide and Crisis Lifeline 988.
6452800, that's Lifeline. 988 is I assume an emergency number for similar to 999, right? So 3-digit number 988, National Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. It's and the way how things are going in news, that 988 number might be more pertinent than you think.
Okay.
You could call it for somebody else potentially. Yeah. And the thing is, you never know. You never know. And even if it's not suicide, look, I had a friend pass away last year around this time, and we kind of only found out days after, and it was a thing.
Yeah.
And that's and another man who we got accustomed to not hearing from regularly.
Yeah. And there's another statistic is that men tend to commit suicide in a larger quantity than women.
Now, we don't think he committed suicide, but the point is, what if we did have communication with him?
Right. Or he didn't commit suicide?
No, we don't think so.
All right.
But he was so far gone, the autopsy is inconclusive. But the thing is, what if we could have gotten him medical attention? If we knew to ring the alarm bells, but nobody knew, right? Because we were so accustomed, every man is an island.
Yeah.
But that's just another thing. My immediate group has tried to put in steps to counteract that. Others who knew him that are part of the wider group of also as well. And that's, I guess, the first step. Ironically, basic socialization, step number one.
Yeah.
And then, trying to generate that trust in order to get into deeper topics about yourselves is then the next couple of steps. But let's, before we go way over time, let's take the comments quick. Options are parading of opportunities and their outcomes. Trust the option you think you can trust rather than the one you know you can't. Mediocrity is the manufacturing of inconsistency. I think the problem is the options right now both are lacking. So we fool ourselves into thinking we can trust one of them every 5 years, and we have buyer's remorse. Maybe they get 10 years older. That COVID election was a weird thing, right? I don't know if that technically counts as a true litmus test. That was a unique situation. Let's go to the next comment quick. Good morning, Sean. Tech needs to do much better. They fix one street light and the other go down. I actually have near me street lights that haven't been fixed, I think, in a year. But so the one they fixed wasn't working for practically 2 years. Yep. On Cellar Street, Curab by St. Mary's Bakery, it lights for a minute and goes out for 3 to 4 minutes, and lights again repeatedly. Some nights, no lights at all. We have to contend with the homeless, destitution, thieves, and night workers, not forgetting drugs. No, there's some street lights near me which they haven't been working for at least a year, if not 2 years. And I'm not talking it comes on every now and then. I'm like just not working.
Maybe.
And we just kind of deal with it.
Maybe you can report it to the ICNTT Complaints Authority. I don't know.
At this point, I don't know. I feel for this caller. Caller, I feel for you. We can't get the little things right. We can't get the big things right. And then you have Wakebees like ASP Arun caught in the middle trying to keep the thing from falling apart. Yeah, right? Nurses, similar to him. Public sector workers, similar to him. Members of TNTAC and WASA staff, similar to him. Hopefully you all don't, get sick and end up in hospital being overworked. I have a few friends that ended up in that way, ironically, not in a job like yours, and something a lot more mundane. Right. If you could be an IT tech and overwork and end up in hospital, imagine what police officers go through. I'm just saying. Yeah. Thanks, Aaron, for joining me once again. Thanks to the callers and to the commenters. Folks, let's talk about that earlier. Any commentary will continue. Of course, media bread review and all of that coming up. So when it happens, we'll talk about it as well. Until then, stay safe. Remember your allegiance to the Republic and to each other. Don't forget it's nice to be nice. And yes, even if one politician or two or one on each side or many and their supporters decide to say racist things, it's still nice to be nice. Be nice to them. Let them say whatever they want to say. However bad it might look, don't descend to that level. So we can see each other tomorrow. Bye-bye.
WESN